The Fury of Nature, America's Deadliest Hurricane Chronicles. Chapter 1, The Great Galveston Hurricane, September 8, 1900. Welcome to a journey through America's most catastrophic natural disasters. Today we uncover the terrifying truth behind the deadliest hurricanes that have ravaged the United States throughout history. Our story begins with the most devastating hurricane disaster in American history. A storm so powerful it literally erased an entire city from existence. September 8, 1900. Galveston, Texas stood as the jewel of the Gulf Coast, a thriving metropolis of 37,000 souls completely unaware that nature was about to unleash her ultimate fury upon them. The Great Galveston Hurricane approached with winds exceeding 145 miles per hour, carrying with it a storm surge that would transform this beautiful coastal city into a graveyard. Isaac Klein, the chief meteorologist for the U.S. Weather Bureau in Galveston, became the unwitting herald of doom as he witnessed barometric pressure readings that defied all previous records. The hurricane brought with it a 15-foot storm surge that swept across the entire island like a biblical flood. Houses were ripped from their foundations, families torn apart by rushing waters, and an estimated 8,000 to 12,000 people perished in a single day. The aftermath was beyond comprehension. Bodies floated in the streets for weeks, and survivors resorted to burning the dead on massive pyres to prevent disease. This catastrophic hurricane changed everything about how America would prepare for future storms, leading to the construction of the famous Galveston seawall and revolutionizing weather forecasting forever. Chapter 2, The Labor Day Hurricane, September 2, 1935. Moving forward in our chronicle of destruction, we encounter the most intense hurricane ever to make landfall in the United States. The Labor Day hurricane of 1935 struck the Florida Keys with such devastating force that it redefined our understanding of nature's raw power. This Category 5 monster possessed the lowest barometric pressure ever recorded in a landfalling Atlantic hurricane, measuring an apocalyptic 26.35 inches. Wind speeds reached an incomprehensible 185 miles per hour, with gusts exceeding 200 miles per hour. The storm surge in some areas reached 20 feet, completely submerging entire islands. The Florida Keys bore the brunt of this atmospheric demon. Islamorada was virtually wiped off the map, with only concrete foundations remaining where once stood thriving communities. A rescue train sent to evacuate veterans working on the overseas highway was literally blown off the tracks, its massive locomotive tossed like a child's toy. What made this hurricane particularly tragic was the loss of World War I veterans who were working on government projects in the Keys. These heroes who survived the trenches of Europe met their fate at the hands of nature's fury. The death toll reached 423 people, but the psychological impact on America was immeasurable, as newsreels showed the complete devastation to shocked audiences nationwide. Chapter 3, Hurricane Camille, August 17, 1969. Our journey continues with Hurricane Camille, a storm that became synonymous with absolute destruction and defied every prediction meteorologists dared to make. This Category 5 hurricane struck the Mississippi Gulf Coast with such ferocity that it literally changed the landscape forever. Camille approached the coast with sustained winds of 190 miles per hour, making it one of only 3 hurricanes to reach Category 5 intensity at landfall in U.S. history. The storm surge reached an astronomical 24 feet in some areas, completely obliterating coastal communities and pushing destruction miles inland. Pass Christian, Mississippi, once a beautiful coastal town, was reduced to nothing but concrete slabs and twisted debris. The Richelieu Apartments in Pass Christian became a symbol of Camille's wrath when all but one of its residents perished as the building was completely destroyed by the surge. Hurricane parties turned into death traps as residents who chose to ride out the storm discovered too late the true meaning of nature's fury. The storm's path of destruction extended far beyond the coast. As Camille moved inland, it maintained its deadly power, causing catastrophic flooding in Virginia that killed 153 people. Flash floods in Nelson County, Virginia, dropped over 30 inches of rain in 8 hours, creating walls of water that swept entire communities away. The total death toll reached 256 people, making Camille one of the deadliest hurricanes in American history. Chapter 4, Hurricane Andrew, August 24, 1992. Fast forward to modern times, where advanced technology and improved forecasting should have made us safer. Yet Hurricane Andrew proved that nature still held cards we hadn't anticipated, devastating South Florida with a precision that revealed the shocking vulnerability of modern American communities. Andrew struck Homestead, Florida, as a compact but incredibly powerful Category 5 hurricane with sustained winds of 165 miles per hour. What made Andrew particularly terrifying was its small eye and tight wind field, which concentrated its devastating power into a narrow corridor of absolute destruction. The hurricane exposed the shocking reality of inadequate building codes and construction practices in South Florida. Entire subdivisions were leveled, mobile home parks were obliterated, and even structures built to withstand hurricanes crumbled like sandcastles. The town of Homestead was virtually erased from existence, with 99% of all mobile homes destroyed and 90% of all buildings damaged or destroyed. Andrew's economic impact was staggering, causing over $26 billion in damage and leaving 250,000 people homeless. The hurricane revealed that despite decades of preparation and modern technology, America was still woefully unprepared for nature's ultimate fury. The disaster led to complete overhauls of building codes and emergency management procedures that continue to save lives today. Chapter 5, Hurricane Katrina, August 29, 2005. No discussion of American hurricane disasters would be complete without examining Hurricane Katrina, the storm that exposed the deep flaws in America's disaster preparedness and revealed shocking inequalities in how disasters affect different communities. Katrina made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane, but its true devastation came from the catastrophic failure of New Orleans' levee system. The storm surge pushed water through multiple breaches, flooding 80% of New Orleans and trapping thousands of residents in a nightmare of rising water and government abandonment. The images from New Orleans shocked the world. Families stranded on rooftops for days without rescue, the Superdome transformed into a hellish shelter without adequate supplies, and bodies floating in the flooded streets of America's most culturally rich cities. The death toll reached 1,833 people, making Katrina the deadliest hurricane since the Great Galveston hurricane. What made Katrina particularly tragic was the disproportionate impact on poor and minority communities who lacked the resources to evacuate. The disaster revealed uncomfortable truths about American society and led to a complete restructuring of federal emergency response capabilities. The economic damage exceeded $125 billion, making it one of the costliest natural disasters in U.S. history. Chapter 6, Hurricane Sandy, October 29, 2012. Our chronicle moves to the Northeast, where Hurricane Sandy shattered the myth that major hurricanes only threaten the South. This unprecedented storm brought hurricane devastation to areas that had never experienced such fury, forever changing how America viewed hurricane risk. Sandy was a meteorological monster, unlike any storm previously recorded. As it approached the coast, Sandy merged with a winter storm system and an Arctic blast, creating a superstorm with a wind field spanning over 1,000 miles. This massive storm brought hurricane-force winds, blizzard conditions, and devastating storm surge to an area stretching from the Carolinas to Maine. New York City experienced its worst natural disaster since Hurricane Donna in 1960. The storm surge reached 14 feet in lower Manhattan, flooding subway tunnels, knocking out power to millions, and bringing the nation's financial capital to a complete standstill. Iconic images showed cars floating in the financial district and National Guard troops patrolling the darkened streets of Manhattan. The Jersey Shore, immortalized in popular culture, was completely transformed by Sandy's fury. Seaside Heights' famous boardwalk was destroyed, with pieces found miles inland. The storm caused 72 deaths and over $65 billion in damage, proving that hurricanes could devastate any part of the American coast. Chapter 7, Hurricane Harvey, August 25, 2017. Houston, we have a problem. Hurricane Harvey introduced America to a new type of hurricane disaster, one where the storm's slow movement created an unprecedented rainfall catastrophe that turned the nation's fourth-largest city into an inland sea. Harvey made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane, but its true devastation came from its unprecedented rainfall totals. The storm stalled over Houston for days, dropping over 60 inches of rain in some areas and setting new records for rainfall from a single weather event in the contiguous United States. The city's inadequate drainage system was completely overwhelmed, flooding over 300,000 structures and displacing over 30,000 people to emergency shelters. The images from Houston were surreal. Interstate highways became rivers, with only the tops of road signs visible above the water. Thousands of residents were rescued from their homes by boat, creating scenes more reminiscent of a major flood than a hurricane. The storm caused 68 deaths and over $125 billion in damage. Harvey revealed the shocking vulnerability of America's major cities to extreme rainfall events, highlighting how urban development and climate change were creating new types of hurricane disasters that traditional preparations couldn't address. Chapter 8. Hurricane Maria, September 20, 2017. Just weeks after Harvey devastated Texas, Hurricane Maria struck Puerto Rico with such devastating force that it created America's worst humanitarian disaster in decades, exposing shocking inequalities in how the federal government responds to disasters affecting American citizens. Maria made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane with winds of 155 miles per hour, completely destroying Puerto Rico's already fragile electrical grid and leaving the entire island of 3.4 million American citizens without power for months. The hurricane's winds were so powerful that they stripped all vegetation from the mountains, leaving the island looking like a desert. The aftermath of Maria revealed shocking truths about America's treatment of Puerto Rico. While the mainland received massive federal response efforts for Harvey and Irma, Puerto Rico struggled with inadequate supplies, slow federal response, and a complete breakdown of basic services. The death toll, initially reported as 64, was later revised to 2,975 people, making Maria one of the deadliest natural disasters in U.S. history. The humanitarian crisis extended for months, with many residents lacking electricity, clean water, and medical care. The disaster exposed how geographic isolation and political status made Puerto Rico particularly vulnerable to hurricane disasters and federal neglect. Chapter 9. Hurricane Michael, October 10, 2018. The panhandle of Florida experienced nature's ultimate fury when Hurricane Michael made landfall as the strongest hurricane ever recorded in the region, bringing unprecedented destruction to communities that had never experienced such devastating power. Michael intensified with shocking speed, growing from a Category 2 to a Category 5 hurricane in just 24 hours, before making landfall with sustained winds of 161 miles per hour. This rapid intensification caught many residents off guard, leaving insufficient time for evacuation and preparation. Mexico Beach, Florida bore the brunt of Michael's fury and was virtually wiped off the map. The storm surge reached 14 feet, and winds exceeding 160 miles per hour reduced most buildings to rubble. Aerial footage showed complete devastation, with only concrete foundations remaining where once stood thriving beachfront communities. The hurricane caused 74 deaths and over $25 billion in damage, proving that even with modern forecasting technology, rapidly intensifying hurricanes could still catch America unprepared for nature's ultimate power. Chapter 10. Hurricane Ian, September 28, 2022. Our chronicle concludes with Hurricane Ian, the most recent reminder that hurricane disasters continue to evolve and threaten American communities with unprecedented fury, bringing devastation to southwest Florida that will be remembered for generations. Ian struck southwest Florida as a Category 4 hurricane with sustained winds of 150 miles per hour, bringing a storm surge that reached 15 feet in some areas. The hurricane's path of destruction was concentrated on Fort Myers, Cape Coral, and Sanibel Island, communities that were transformed into disaster zones within hours. What made Ian particularly devastating was its impact on barrier islands that serve as popular retirement destinations. Sanibel Island's causeway was completely destroyed, stranding residents who chose to stay. The storm surge on Fort Myers Beach reached 2 stories high, completely destroying most structures and creating debris fields that stretched for miles. The economic impact of Ian exceeded $112 billion, making it one of the costliest hurricanes in U.S. history. The death toll reached 156 people, proving that despite decades of improved forecasting and preparation, hurricanes still possess the power to create catastrophic disasters that forever change American communities. Chapter 11. Hurricane Nicole, November 10, 2022. Just 6 weeks after Hurricane Ian devastated southwest Florida, nature delivered another devastating blow to the already traumatized state. Hurricane Nicole became a rare late-season hurricane that proved storm season never truly ends, bringing unprecedented destruction to Florida's Atlantic coast during what should have been the quietest time of the hurricane calendar. Nicole made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane, but its timing and track made it particularly destructive. The storm struck areas still recovering from Ian's devastation, hitting communities where weakened structures and debris-filled lots created perfect conditions for catastrophic damage. What made Nicole especially dangerous was its massive size and slow movement, allowing it to pummel the same areas for hours with destructive winds and storm surge. The Daytona Beach area bore the brunt of Nicole's fury, where the storm surge reached 5 feet and combined with high tide to create devastating coastal flooding. Dozens of beachfront condominiums that had stood for decades were declared unsafe and later demolished, their foundations literally washed away by the relentless pounding of Nicole's waves. Nicole caused 11 deaths and over $1 billion in damage, proving that even weaker hurricanes could cause catastrophic destruction when they strike vulnerable areas at the wrong time. The storm highlighted how climate change was extending hurricane season and creating new patterns of destruction that challenged traditional preparation strategies. Chapter 12, Hurricane Idalia, August 30th, 2023. Florida's Big Bend region, an area that had been spared from major hurricane impacts for over a century, finally met its match when Hurricane Idalia roared ashore as a Category 3 hurricane, bringing the first major hurricane landfall to the region since 1896. Idalia underwent rapid intensification in the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, growing from a tropical storm to a major hurricane in just 48 hours. This explosive development caught many residents off guard, as the Big Bend region had developed a false sense of security after decades without a direct hit from a major hurricane. The storm surge in Taylor County reached 12 feet, completely inundating coastal communities that had never experienced such devastating flooding. Cedar Key, a historic fishing village, was completely submerged, with only rooftops visible above the storm surge. The town's famous seafood restaurants and historic buildings, some dating back over a century, were destroyed in a matter of hours. Idalia's path of destruction extended far inland, with Tallahassee experiencing its worst hurricane damage in decades. The state capital lost power for days, and Florida State University's campus suffered extensive damage from fallen trees and wind destruction. The hurricane caused 12 deaths and over $5 billion in damage, awakening the Big Bend region to the reality that nowhere along Florida's coast was truly safe from hurricane devastation. Chapter 13, Hurricane Debby, August 5, 2024. Hurricane Debby introduced a new chapter in America's hurricane disasters by becoming a slow-moving catastrophe that redefined what meteorologists call a rainfall hurricane. This storm proved that hurricanes don't need to be Category 4 or 5 monsters to create biblical flooding and widespread destruction. Debby made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane, but its true devastation came from its painfully slow movement across the southeast. The storm crawled across Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas at speeds of just 2 to 3 miles per hour, dropping catastrophic amounts of rainfall over the same areas for days. Some locations received over 20 inches of rain, creating flooding that rivaled major river floods. Sarasota, Florida, experienced its worst flooding disaster in recorded history as Debby's relentless rainfall overwhelmed the city's drainage systems. Downtown areas became rivers, with cars floating in parking lots and businesses submerged under several feet of water. The storm surge combined with torrential rainfall created a perfect storm of water devastation that left thousands of residents stranded in their homes. What made Debby particularly insidious was how it challenged traditional hurricane evacuation strategies. Many residents who fled inland to escape the storm surge found themselves trapped in even worse flooding, as Debby's rainfall created widespread river flooding throughout the interior. The storm caused 47 deaths and over $28 billion in damage, proving that slow-moving hurricanes could be just as deadly as their more powerful counterparts. Chapter 14, Hurricane Helene, September 26, 2024. Hurricane Helene rewrote the rules of hurricane disasters by becoming the most devastating inland hurricane in American history, proving that hurricane destruction could extend hundreds of miles from the coast and reach areas that had never experienced such devastation. Helene made landfall as a massive Category 4 hurricane in Florida's Big Bend, but its unprecedented size and forward speed allowed it to maintain hurricane-force winds deep into the Appalachian Mountains. This created a disaster scenario that no one had anticipated, as communities in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia found themselves facing hurricane-force winds and catastrophic flooding hundreds of miles from the nearest coast. Asheville, North Carolina, a mountain city that residents believed was safe from hurricane disasters, became ground zero for unprecedented destruction. The French Broad River reached record flood levels, completely submerging downtown Asheville and destroying the historic River Arts District. The flooding was so severe that it changed the course of rivers and created new lakes where none had existed before. The mountain communities of western North Carolina experienced apocalyptic destruction, as Helene's rainfall triggered countless landslides and flash floods. Entire towns were swept away, roads became impassable rivers, and rescue efforts were hampered by the complete destruction of communication systems. The storm caused 241 deaths across 6 states, making it the deadliest hurricane since Katrina. What made Helene particularly tragic was how it exposed the complete lack of hurricane preparedness in inland mountain communities. These areas had no evacuation plans, no hurricane shelters, and no experience dealing with storm surge and hurricane-force winds. The disaster proved that climate change was expanding the geographic reach of hurricane devastation far beyond traditional coastal zones. Chapter 15, Hurricane Milton, October 9, 2024. Hurricane Milton became the nightmare scenario that meteorologists had warned about for decades. A Category 5 hurricane that underwent explosive intensification while heading directly toward one of America's most vulnerable metropolitan areas, the Tampa Bay region of Florida. Milton achieved the rare feat of reaching maximum sustained winds of 180 miles per hour while maintaining perfect organization in the Gulf of Mexico. The hurricane's rapid intensification from a Category 1 to a Category 5 storm in just 24 hours created panic across central Florida as residents realized they were facing a potential catastrophe of unprecedented proportions. What made Milton particularly terrifying was its track toward Tampa Bay, an area that had not experienced a direct hit from a major hurricane since 1921. The region's explosive population growth, extensive development in flood-prone areas, and geography that acts like a funnel for storm surge created the perfect conditions for a disaster that could have killed tens of thousands of people. Fortunately, Milton weakened slightly before landfall, making landfall as a Category 3 hurricane south of Tampa Bay. However, the storm still brought devastating storm surge to areas that had never experienced such flooding, particularly around Sarasota and Venice. The surge reached 10 feet in some areas, flooding thousands of homes and businesses that were built in areas incorrectly believed to be safe from storm surge. Milton's tornado outbreak was historic, spawning over 40 tornadoes across central Florida and creating multiple disaster scenarios simultaneously. St. Lucie County on Florida's east coast was particularly hard hit by tornadoes, with entire neighborhoods destroyed by EF3 and EF4 tornadoes that developed in Milton's outer bands. The hurricane caused 24 deaths and over $85 billion in damage. But its true legacy was the wake-up call it provided to Tampa Bay area residents about their extreme vulnerability to hurricane disasters. The storm proved that rapid intensification could turn a manageable hurricane threat into a catastrophic disaster in a matter of hours. Chapter 16, Tropical Storm Chantal, July 6, 2025. As we enter the modern era of hurricane disasters, Tropical Storm Chantal proves that even storms that never reach hurricane intensity can create devastating flooding disasters that forever change communities. This July 2025 storm became a stark reminder that in the age of climate change, every tropical system poses a potential catastrophe. Chantal formed on July 4, 2025, during what should have been a quiet early season period, but quickly intensified as it approached the southeast coast. The storm made landfall in South Carolina as a tropical storm with maximum sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. But its slow movement and massive moisture content created the perfect recipe for catastrophic flooding. What made Chantal particularly devastating was its ability to produce extreme rainfall totals, despite never reaching hurricane strength. The storm dropped over 14 inches of rain in parts of central North Carolina, with some areas receiving catastrophic amounts that exceeded historic flood records. The Eno River near Huckleberry Springs reached an unprecedented 23.04 feet, shattering the previous record of 14.91 feet set in 1989. Central North Carolina became a disaster zone as Chantal's relentless rainfall overwhelmed drainage systems and turned normally peaceful streams into raging torrents. Chapel Hill's fire department completed over 50 water rescues in a single night, as residents found themselves trapped in their homes by rapidly rising floodwaters. Over 100 roads across the region were flooded, creating transportation nightmares that lasted for days. The human toll of Chantal was heartbreaking, with 8 people losing their lives to the flooding, proving that tropical storms could be just as deadly as major hurricanes. The economic impact reached between $4 and $6 billion in damage and economic losses across the Carolinas, demonstrating how flooding disasters could create massive economic disruption even without hurricane-force winds. Chantal's legacy lies in its demonstration that the changing climate was creating new types of tropical disasters, where slow-moving storms could produce rainfall totals that exceeded the capacity of modern infrastructure to handle. The storm served as a warning that communities throughout the Southeast needed to prepare for extreme flooding events, regardless of whether storms reached hurricane intensity. Epilogue: The future of hurricane disasters in America. As we conclude our journey through America's most devastating hurricane disasters, from the Great Galveston Hurricane of 1900 to Tropical Storm Chantal in 2025, one truth emerges with terrifying clarity. Hurricane disasters are becoming more complex, more unpredictable, and potentially more devastating than ever before. The storms of today are fundamentally different from those of the past. Climate change has supercharged hurricanes with warmer ocean temperatures, allowing for rapid intensification that can transform manageable storms into catastrophic monsters in a matter of hours. Sea level rise has increased storm surge heights, while changing atmospheric patterns are creating storms that move slower and drop unprecedented amounts of rainfall. Hurricane Helene proved that no inland community is safe, as hurricane devastation reached hundreds of miles from the coast into areas that had never prepared for such disasters. Hurricane Milton demonstrated how rapid intensification could threaten major metropolitan areas with little warning. Tropical Storm Chantal showed that even non-hurricane storms could create billion-dollar flooding disasters. The geographic reach of hurricane disasters continues to expand. We've witnessed devastating impacts from Texas to Maine, from the Florida Keys to the mountains of North Carolina. Traditional hurricane preparation strategies are being challenged by new types of storms that don't follow historical patterns. As America faces an uncertain climate future, the lessons from these historic disasters become more critical than ever. Each storm teaches us about our vulnerabilities while showing us the incredible resilience of the human spirit. From the survivors who rebuilt Galveston to the communities still recovering from recent disasters, Americans have proven time and again that they will not be defeated by nature's fury. The question is no longer if the next great hurricane disaster will strike, but when and where. As we've learned from over a century of hurricane history, preparation, early warning systems, and community resilience are our best defenses against the inevitable fury that nature will unleash upon us. The story of America's hurricane disasters is far from over. Each season brings new threats, new challenges, and new opportunities to learn from nature's ultimate teacher. As we face an uncertain future, we must remember the lessons of the past while preparing for storms that may exceed anything we've yet experienced. The Chronicle continues, and America's resilience will be tested again and again by the awesome power of hurricanes. Which hurricane do you think was America's deadliest? Comment below. Subscribe for more shocking disaster stories and smash that like button if this blew your mind.